What's going on YouTube? It's Mike here. Today guys, in this video we are going to be disassembling an iPhone 5s, the Digitizer assembly entirely. We're going to be putting on a brand new Digitizer. So right here we have a gold iPhone 5s, and as you can see the screen is absolutely shattered and destroyed. We're going to start by turning off the phone itself. Here's our replacement Digitizer without a home button and pieces assembled to it. So we'll put that to the side now, and we're going to take a look at some tools you'll need. First, you're going to need a pentalobe screwdriver for getting the two screws on the bottom in order to remove the screen. Then you're going to need a regular flathead screwdriver for prying some things, a regular Phillips head screwdriver for several screws inside the phone, as well as a smaller Phillips screwdriver if you need it. You want to just have 2 or 3 sizes, just handy. You probably won't need them, but they're always good to have. Now you're going to start by removing both bottom pentalobe screws from the device. And after both pentalobe screws are removed, you can grab a suction cup or some other type of prying tool and go ahead and remove the screen. Now after you have removed both pentalobe screws, you're ready to actually pry the screen off of the device. As you can see, it accidentally turned back on here. Just make sure you're turning it off. And then as you can see, I've already pried the screen up. You can do this with a flathead screwdriver or any other tool. And as you can see, there's a wire sticking out which actually connects to the Touch ID sensor, which differentiates from the iPhone 5 and the 5C. So you're going to need to go ahead and pull that out. There's a little clip right under. I don't really have to show it because it's very simple to do. There's a little metal clip that you're going to have to go ahead and pry up. It should just bounce out. It's a very small piece, so be sure to keep track of it. And then right under that, there's just a little cable that pops right up. After you've disconnected the cable, you are ready to proceed by removing the plate on the inside, or the shield that holds down all of your wires. Now there are 4 Phillips head screws that you're going to need with a screwdriver, so go ahead and grab that. You're going to get all 4 screws. 3 are magnetized, 1 is not, so be careful. And once you have all of them unscrewed, you're ready to start disconnecting some cables. From here on out, after you remove the shield, you go ahead and put that, and it screws to the side, and you are ready to start actually removing some wires. So there are about 4 wires in here, 3 or 4, can't remember off the top of my head, but you're going to want to go ahead and disconnect them all. They're kind of like Legos, they're relatively easy to pull. Get your plastic spudger, which you're going to need as well. They come in a lot of these repair kits. Just go ahead and spudge them all up, if you know what I mean. And after that's detached, you have the body of the phone, and you're ready to proceed to removing the components from the actual Digitizer that you're going to need to move over your replacement. So you're going to go ahead, the first thing I like to always do is remove the speaker at the top. And so that contains 2 Phillips head screwdrivers. You're going to need quite a big Phillips head screwdriver for this one, slightly bigger than your typical one. But go ahead and get that handy, and you're going to pull both of those screws. Now there's a little bracket over it. I believe it's metal. In this case it might be covered in a bit of plastic, but you're going to go ahead and remove this bracket, and then right under it is actually the speaker assembly. Now if both of these come off or just drop out, don't worry, that's supposed to happen. You might have to give it a little wiggle. The metal is pretty flexible, so you can easily move it in and out. Just be careful not to break it. And after those 2 are out, you'll be able to move on. See, in this case, the Digitizer was so shattered, the actual glass on the front was so shattered that it was actually hard to remove the assembly, but in other cases where the assembly is intact, it will not be as difficult. Now, after you've removed your speaker assembly, you're ready to go ahead and grab your plastic spudger and begin to easily remove your front camera and speaker assembly. Now, this is kind of adhesed on. There's no screws or anything, so you're going to need to pull it off. There's 2 little prongs affixed to the Digitizer itself, so be careful when you're removing it. It should come off pretty easy, and then you're just going to go ahead and lift it up a little bit. Now, there's a sticker on the metal shield, which typically people peel off. However, in this case, I'm just going to leave it on. There's no need to peel it off, as a matter of fact. So you could just leave it on there. A lot of people do it, and they just peel it off. I don't know why. It ruins the sticker. But anyways, next you want to move on to your Touch ID assembly. Now there are 2 screws on the bottom, one on the left and one on the right, that will remove the metal plate from the Touch ID sensor. Go ahead and get your Phillips screwdriver and take both of those screws out, and the metal plate should lift off very easily. After you have the metal shield from the Touch ID sensor disassembled, you're ready to go ahead and remove the metal plate from the actual bracket / Digitizer. Now there are 3 screws on each side, totaling up to 6, and there's also one on the very bottom near the Touch ID sensor. So I usually begin by removing right side first, and then I line up the screws accordingly. These are slightly different size, so keep track of them and make sure they're in the right order. And just one by one, pull them out, remove them, and keep them, like I said, in order. Do it on both sides, and then you're just about ready to remove it. Okay, after that, after you've removed the shield, you're going to need to start worrying about the Touch ID assembly at the very bottom. Now, this is a bit different from the iPhone 5 and iPhone 5C. This is actually, it has very weird flex cables that you're going to need to be very careful when removing. You don't want to destroy them or bend them or even tear them in this case. So just very easily and gently try to remove them. The home button just pops out from the front, as you can probably assume. It always does that. However, just removing the wires and stuff from the actual piece of plastic, you have to be very careful in doing. And then once it's removed, you're ready to proceed. Alright, and now we are ready to proceed with putting the metal shield and all the components back onto the new Digitizer. I've already removed the old Digitizer from this setting, so this is the new one that we're working with at this point. Now you're first going to want to start by putting your Touch ID sensor back into the new Digitizer. And you want to try and center this as best as possible and fit it in there accordingly. You want to center it because otherwise it will not read your fingerprint straight and you'll have to worry about turning your finger when doing it. So you can center this from the back based on how the rubber goes in. It's really not all that hard. Just try your best to do it. Once that's all set in there, you're going to go ahead and drop the metal plate on. And then very carefully get your screws using your magnetized screwdriver, and you're going to affix them through the bracket onto the actual metal shield piece. And do this one by one. Again, don't forget the one on the bottom either. So once you have affixed the metal shield to the Digitizer, you're ready to proceed by putting the shield back on the Touch ID sensor. Again, make sure all adhesive is intact, and then grab both Phillips head screwdrivers and as well as the screws, and begin to actually screw the plate back in. Again, make sure this is centered. This piece actually, if you're going one screw at a time, tends to move around a lot. So with your opposite finger, not using the screwdriver, just be sure to center it out, because you don't want to strip the screws, nor do you want to strip their sockets. So just be really careful when it comes to this part. This is one of those parts that doesn't just fall into place. You have to guide it into there, if you know what I mean. Alright, and after you have finished up your home button assembly, you are just about ready to put your speaker assembly back in. This is the one with the kind of bent metal. If it doesn't go in at first, just kind of bend the end part of the metal around. You will get it in. It's really not all that difficult. You also want to make sure on the right side of it, there is a little clip on the piece of plastic on the new replacement Digitizer that will actually hang on to this metal piece. That's actually the case for both the left and right. So just kind of get a feel for it. Also try and match it with the screw holes. If it doesn't feel like it's completely down, don't worry. Chances are, if you have it lined up with the screw holes and you've pushed it into both the right and left slots as far as you can, chances are it's already in, and you just need to screw it in order for it to be weighed down. Just don't fully screw it down. Make sure you have it right, and then proceed with tightening it. You just want to be really careful, because this part is prone to actually shattering the Digitizer if you screw it in too tight. From this point on, your main Digitizer assembly is complete. Now it's just a matter of connecting everything back to your actual device, closing it up, and starting it up. So you're going to start by connecting these Lego piece, as I like to call it, connectors. These are pretty simple to put back in, probably a little bit more difficult than actually removing, but just kind of guide them into where they belong. You'll see them match up. They're in all different shapes and directions, so you'll know which ones differentiate from each, and just kind of guide them in. Make sure they're fully pressed down. You could kind of tug on the screen a very little bit just to make sure they're not loose or anything, and once you have all 3 or 4 plugged in, whatever the odd number is, or even number for that matter, then you're all set to go to actually place your silver shield over these wires. And again, as you can see, I have a third hand here. No, just kidding. I have someone actually assisting me holding the digitizer, because when you're actually putting these wires back on, you want to be very careful that the new digitizer doesn't fully bend to the point where these wires snap and even break in that case. So if you need it, have assistance handy, or just prop it up against something. You don't want to ruin these wires. Keep track. Once you have put all of the, as I like to call again, Lego piece wires back in, you are ready to proceed by putting your metal shield over all 4 connectors. So get your screws together. Again, remember 3 are magnetized, 1 is not. So go ahead and grab all 4 of those and begin to put them into their corresponding holes. Now, keep in mind these are different sized screws for each hole. So you want to make sure you're getting the right ones, because one, you don't want to strip the screw, you don't want to strip its socket again, and also it will provide for a much more difficult reassembly. Now at this point we are just about finished. All we need to do left, unfortunately, is connect the Touch ID sensor. Now I know, unfortunately sounds bad, and I say that because this is probably one of the hardest parts that I've had so far when it comes to disassembling and reassembling iPhone 5s digitizers. The Touch ID sensor is difficult because first of all you have to guide the wire back in place. Now this is very difficult to do when the phone is just about 75% closed. So you can use different tools and stuff, or just small pointy ends of things to actually help guide that wire in, because you cannot stick your entire finger in there and actually push it in. It just won't work. But you have to be very careful because this is a very thin and small cable. Again, this actually is probably the most prone cable to getting damage, and you want to have a phone that has a working Touch ID sensor. So do not, whatever you do, mess with it that much. If you really can't do it, put it off to the side and have a professional do it. It's much easier removing than it is pulling, just because it is so incredibly hard to get in. And I mean, after you have the wire in, you're going to go ahead and grab your little metal shield that came with it, and you're going to want to put that over, and that was the most difficult part of this entire thing, because that is just extremely hard to position, and once you start pushing down on it, it has tendencies to bounce off of the device or bounce out of its slot. So you just have to be very careful, get it in the exact right position, and then very gently push down. Then once that's in there, you're set. So from this point on, guys, as soon as you have that Touch ID cable connected, you are just about set, and your actual device is pretty much done for. So at this point, you want to actually guide your new digitizer back into the phone. Remember, you always want to go down speaker first and kind of guide it in, and then gently push down on the home button end to actually have it snap in. And if you followed all the steps correctly, you're just about set. Grab your pentalobe screwdriver and put both pentalobe screws on the bottom near the lightning charging port and headphone jack, and you are set. Go ahead and screw it up, boot it up, test out everything that involves home button, the Touch ID sensor, the actual screen and display, of course, your speaker, microphone, front-facing camera, and anything else attached to that. And you're set.